Welcome back, everybody, to the OPT Network. This morning, we're talking about a subject that will hopefully be refreshing to all. In the culture that we live in today, where bullying is really taking over and having its way in schools, in workplaces, and even in politics. This morning, we're talking about how we can make the shift to kindness and to a place where we used to say that politically correct things were just things that we stayed away from, or politically incorrect things. Now, if it comes to the head, it comes out of the mouth. This morning, we're talking about the kindness advantage. Our guests this morning are Dr. Dale Atkins and her niece, Amanda Salzhauer. They join us, one from New York and one from Connecticut, to talk about their incredibly poignant book, The Kindness Advantage, Cultivating Compassionate and Connected Children. Ladies, good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Carlette. Thanks so much for having us.
And so we've had a whole conversation before the conversation, and not just for my family and for the world, but this book is so timely. Dr. Atkins, begin by telling us how you guys started the birthing process.
I love that you said the birthing process because it was 6 years ago, and it's something that we came together about because both for Amanda and me in our families and in our practices at the time, we were seeing so much bullying. We were seeing disrespectful behavior, a lot in the world, as you referenced, Carlette, but also in our families and our grandkids and kids' families, their friends. I have 2 adult sons and 6 grandchildren. Amanda has 3 young adult teenage children and 3 daughters. And we were commenting to each other about how this was kind of so prevalent now. And I was giving some talks around the country about raising financially responsible and compassionate children and charitable children. And Amanda and I were talking about this, and we kind of said, you know what? Why don't we kind of investigate this and think about talking about raising charitable children? And that's how it started. Mm-hmm. And then it evolved into focusing more on compassion and kindness because we started interviewing people who we thought were pretty charitable. And they all seem to share some qualities. And that's what we talk about in the book, are these fundamentals of kindness. Mm-hmm. So it was a process. And, we hung in there, and we're really glad we did.
So, Amanda, Dr. Atkins is talking about you all hanging in there. What went into the birthing process for you on your side of bringing this to fruition and what it would ultimately become?
A lot. I think that we really worked so closely together on every phase of the process, every word of the book. Much of the book, we actually sat side by side. Dale is speaking to you from her office. You can see the room where we wrote the book literally together. And until we became more adept at using some more advanced technology like Google Docs, where we could sit in separate locations and be looking at the same screen. Mm-hmm. But as Dale mentioned, sort of the book went through some evolutionary processes, I would say. And in one of the earlier iterations, we were really writing kind of separate pieces for parents and for children. The way the book is now, as you read it, they're sort of interwoven. So for each fundamental, we have a section for parents to read and a section for kids to read, and things for parents to do and things for kids to do. In an earlier life of the book, that was much more separate. So I was sort of the voice of the kids, and Dale was the voice of the parents. And as we evolved the format, we had to merge those 2 voices. So I think that that was a really interesting and somewhat challenging piece for us to kind of land on a voice that felt like it represented each of us, but was a consistent voice throughout the book.
So, Dr. Atkins, I wonder, in starting the book and having the concept of what you wanted to do, were you all able to relinquish control and let it be what it had morphed into, the book and the work that we see today, or did you resist that?
That's a great question. I can speak for myself, and I know I was a little tied to it. I was a little hesitant, but maybe more than a little,
Maybe more than a little.
of letting go of the format because it was organized in a different way. And it's, one of the first ways we were writing the book, it was going to be the alphabet of giving. And we had words for each I was really, I loved that.
You were connected to that concept.
And so, and to let that go without knowing exactly what it was going to be, I really credit Amanda for encouraging me to do that. And at times, I think both of us are saying, well, wait a minute, is this really going to go? Or, did we take it as far as it could go? And should we just leave it and call it a day? It was a great effort. And then we didn't, and we kept going. And I think both of us are pretty pleased with the way it evolved. But your question is such a great question about the creative process, about writing, about working with a teammate and feeling connected and an obligation. We started this. How are we going to reach our goal? What if our goal looks different? And I had a harder time with that. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because also, Amanda is a wonderful writer and very clear. And this is her first book. And she really kept us, I think, very much focused on what did we really want to do and what was our message. And once we really focused on that, and she got me a little more over in that camp, it didn't matter as much what the form was, as long as the message was able to be delivered. Mm-hmm. And I think we were able to do that.
And so for you, Amanda, was that more of a spiritual journey? And the reason why I asked that question is because when you read the book, you understand that it does start out with charitable giving and teaching your kids charity. And you can see that it evolves and it morphs into something even bigger than that. So was it a spiritual journey for you, Amanda, or how does this morph into and you allow it to go where I believe the universe really wants it to go?
You know what? I think I'm grateful that you sort of feel that and see that throughout kind of the arc of the book. And I think, first of all, I want to say, I think, yes, it was a kind of spiritual process on multiple levels, one of which you're sort of seeing a thread of in Dale's conversation, right? How wonderful it is to have the opportunity to work with a family member and see somebody in a completely different light than you might have previously. So sure. I think there's sort of that angle. But I think that one of the things that we write about early in the book is the idea of the golden rule. And regardless of what faith any of us were raised in or anyone was raised in, that's sort of a tenet of being in the world that I think most of us hold dear. And I think sort of Dale alluded to this idea of kind of having to check back in with what it was we wanted to say and to make sure we were being true to our mission and our goal. And I think that for us, that concept of how do we want to treat other people and how do we want other people to treat us was really kind of at the heart of that. And I think as we, kind of in the writing process, as we learned about some of these, what we call real life stories, the kids in the book that we highlight who are doing things that are really coming from a spiritual place. I really believe, they are living their lives with their heart and having a tremendous impact on the world around them. And then, finding an editor that we really trusted and allowing her to help us shape the book and allowing us to let go of some of kind of our preconceived ideas sure. about what we wanted the book to be. Mm-hmm. really was, there was, I think, a spiritual aspect to that. And I think actually the most gratifying piece has been since the book was published and having the opportunity to meet so many different people. And you were so generous in sharing some of your own story with us. And I think that having an opportunity to connect with people in such a way is truly a blessing for us.
There you go. Hold that thought. Let's take a break here, but when we come back, we'll take a deeper dive into the kindness advantage. Stay on point. We're back after this. Welcome back, everybody, to the OPT Network. Our guests this morning, Dr. Dale Atkins and Amanda Salzhauer. They have written an incredibly important book for this season that we all live in, the season of bullying, and we feel like it will never go away, the season of mass shootings that seems to never end, the season of political ire that never seems to go away. Well, this book is entitled The Kindness Advantage, Cultivating Compassionate and Connected Children. And it's not just for children, is it, Amanda? It is really for everybody.
It absolutely is for everybody. And we wrote the book initially thinking that it would resonate most with parents and grandparents of young children. And we're thrilled to see that it has resonated with that group. But one of the really wonderful surprises that we've discovered is that there are actually a lot of schools and teachers and school administrators who also find the book to be a very helpful resource for them. We've had the opportunity to speak at a lot of different schools and churches and synagogues and libraries, and the teacher response has been spectacular. They've really kind of said to us, wow, so many of these suggestions and activities are things I can implement in my classroom. And particularly for teachers of little ones, preschoolers, elementary school students, where those educators have such a focus on bringing kindness into the classroom, and they really understand and take seriously their responsibility to help the kids learn kindness, to model kindness, and to make it part of the classroom culture.
And so, Dr. Atkins, for you on this journey that you are on, speaking around the world, having written several books and communicating with so many, I think that for a lot of schools and a lot of parents, we talk about bullying, but we really don't know what the solution to bullying is and how to stop it. What do you say to those teachers and those leaders and people that really need to understand that bullying is very real and this is how we can begin to stop it?
One of the things that we try to help people understand is how empathy is very, very important. Empathy not only for the person who's bullied, but empathy for the person who's doing the bullying.
Okay, let's stop right there.
Okay.
Tell us what empathy means.
Empathy, as we describe it, is trying to understand, both with your head and your heart, what it's like to be in someone else's shoes, what it's like to have that experience. And you really do open your heart to that other person's experience. And you try to do it without judgment, and you try to do it without criticism, which doesn't mean that you let it all go, but you look at it and you look at the person and try and understand what's going on with them. What is it that has, propelled them into this type of behavior? And again, you don't excuse the behavior, but you try to touch the humanity of the person. Mm-hmm. And I think that one of the things that if we're able to accomplish with this book is to help people understand that we are human beings and we are wired for kindness from very, very early ages. We choose babies, months old. We choose helpers over hinderers, and we choose and we respond when we hear someone in distress. And it's so part of us and so part of who we are that to deny the impact of bullying on both the victim and the bullier is really to allow it to go on. And I think for so long, to your point, people said, well, what am I going to do about it? Right? Well, we have to say it's unacceptable. We have to stop it. We have to pay attention to the person who was bullied and listen to them and understand what happened to them, what it felt like for them, and then try to build compassion with the person who did the bullying. And so they can understand what it's like, what their actions did. And it's a process, but we can't just punish. We have to be able to teach, and we have to be able to change behavior. And we have to be role models also.
And what I love in the book is that it does start off with young children, but really what you assure parents and grandparents and foster parents and anybody who's raising young people is that it's never too late. It's never too late to start.
We really believe that. And we actually believe both sides. It's never too early to start. Dale was mentioning, some of the studies that talk about, little ones, babies, toddlers, preferences for helpers versus hinderers. And it's never too late to start. And I think that, there are so many opportunities every single day for us to notice other people's acts of kindness and engage in our own acts of kindness. So this is really something that's not difficult to jump into, not difficult to begin, regardless of our age. As we are going about our day, think about all of the people we come into contact with. Right? You might be walking through the supermarket with your teenager and happen upon somebody who's struggling to reach something on a high shelf. And if you yourself or say to your child, do you think you could give that person a hand? Right? That's an opportunity to show kindness to another person. And kind of looping back to what Dale said about, the empathy and the humanity, creating, even if it's just a brief moment, a moment of connection between ourselves and another person. And we have countless opportunities to do that throughout the day.
Absolutely.
And as the mom of teenagers, I know sometimes my kids don't really want to hear what I have to say. And if I'm encouraging them to do something, they're going to run in the other direction. But I think there are a lot of ways to kind of slip it in throughout, through the conversation. If you're sitting together at breakfast, and you happen to be reading the newspaper, and you see a story about somebody, whether it's a sports figure your kid is, enthralled with, or a musician, or just a regular person doing something kind, take a minute and read a few lines of that article and just kind of put it out there. And I think that, especially for, starting late, there are lots of ways to sneak it into the conversation.
That's exactly right. Let's do this. Let's get a break here. But when we come back, we're going to talk about some of the acts of kindness and some of the people that you all got an opportunity to talk to and share their acts of kindness. Stay on point. We're back with more after this. Welcome back, everybody, to the OPT Network. Our guest this morning, Dr. Dale Atkins and Amanda Salzhauer. Their book is entitled The Kindness Advantage: Cultivating Compassionate and Connected Children, Everyday Ideas for Raising Kids Who Care. You know what I thought about, Dr. Atkins, as I was reading the book? Something that is so pervasive in the world today that's never probably going to change. And that is mean girl syndrome. And I think that if we start teaching girls especially, and boys, kids are mean, but little girls start competing very early. And little girls who are mean girls become women who are mean women. And it's something that as women, I don't think that we're overcoming enough. How do you speak to that?
Well, it certainly is exacerbated with the internet and with people being able to, to hurt each other through cyber. But you're absolutely right. Girls can be mean, but girls can also be nice, and not only nice, but kind. And one of the reasons we wrote this book for parents of very young children is that we could start early and get the foundation of nurturing kindness in young boys and girls. And it's interesting because what we've encountered is so many people say, well, girls are supposed to be nice and girls are supposed to be kind. What about the boys? But we also agree with you that, there is this moment in time, 9, 10, 11, when you see more of this mean girl stuff going on. But if we can, and one of the things that we did in the book was we featured young boys and girls who really wanted to change the world, and change the world not necessarily in starting nonprofits, although some of them did, but making change, like a little girl in San Francisco who saw a homeless person on the street, 5 years old. I believe her name was Phoebe. And her preschool said, everybody can do something. What would you like to do as a community service project? And she said she wanted to try and feed hungry people. And within a short amount of turnaround time, she decided that she was going to collect soda cans and redeem them. And she did. And she had this lofty goal of raising $1,000, and her preschool teacher was trying to discourage her because it was so lofty. She ended up raising over $3,000, and it turned into something like 17,000 meals for people. And this little girl's sense of herself changed. She became more of who she was supposed to be, which is she was encouraged. She's a leader. She was able to pursue her passion and do it for kindness. If we can do this with girls and say, your behavior, if somebody's being mean or being insulting or something, and we catch them at it and we say, how do you think that person feels? How would you feel if that was said to you, or if you were excluded from that pajama party? It's not a good thing to do. And that's not what we do in our family. You said before when we were talking, we start with our families. We can only deal with who we are as parents, as the culture in our family, as the values that we have. And when we see things in our kids, and we're going to see them in our kids because nobody's perfect and we're not perfect. But if we say, I think that was really hurtful to that child.
Right.
And it made me sad when you did that. I'd like to talk with you about what's going on with you that you think it's okay, and help the child understand the impact and the consequences of their actions, of their language. It really does help. It's not so punitive. It's really instructive to help them be their best self.
And you know what? To that point, Dr. Atkins, what I realized in reading the book, and you said, when we see these things in our children and we have these conversations, but I think I have to take it a step further, because when I see these things in our son and I see them in my family, they're a direct reflection probably of what I'm giving off. So I'm really seeing myself, because really we are our children's first teachers.
And when we do something and we're not so proud of it, we can say, I'm really sorry that I blew up at you in that way. And, I was, all these things were happening, but I shouldn't have done that. And I take responsibility for it, is what the message is, so that the goal isn't to never make a mistake. The goal is to take responsibility and be aware and be mindful of what you say, and to try and take breaks and gather yourself so that you can try to act with kindness. I don't know, maybe Amanda has something to add to that.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Amanda.
No, I think that you really covered it. And I think that, I think this idea that none of us is our ideal parent every day. Our kids are not their ideal kid every day. And I think that's one that we have to hold on to. And I think the notion of taking responsibility for things that we might regret doing after the fact is wonderful modeling for children. It's all of being kind to ourselves, which I think is something that, we all need to practice as well.
Right. And none of us probably are practicing self-kindness enough, because as you said, Dr. Atkins, we're not the perfect parents and we don't have the perfect kids. But when we look at ourselves and say, I missed it, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, and we offer that kindness and that compassion to ourselves and stop beating ourselves up, then we can get better. Because it's really hard.
I think that's so true. And if we could just give ourselves a little slack, but also give ourselves the opportunity to take a break. And that break could be 5 minutes. It could be 5 seconds of just not speaking when you think you're not sure what you're going to say. Or you can also say to your child, what just happened really bothered me. And I want to think about how I want to talk to you about it, because right now I'm so emotional, but you and I are going to talk about this, in about 5 minutes, or tonight when we get home and we're relaxed. But we are going to talk about it. But I want to be sure that the message I give you is the message I want to give you. That's what you're saying in your head.
I like that.
And I think that that's being kind to ourselves, because we don't have to react like this. We live in a world right now where you send somebody an email, and if they don't get back to you in 3 seconds, you think, well, what's going on?
Right.
We need to take the time that we need in order to process and then give the message we want. And I think the other thing about the Mean Girls is, one of the things we talk about in the book is how important it is to read with your children and to read to your children. And it's so important because you can talk about the characters that you're reading about, and you can say, how do you think they felt? Or do you think they would have done that if their mother was around? Or why do you think they did that? And it removes it. And did you ever feel like that?
Right.
And then it kind of go through the back door, but you come to the lesson. And again, it's about teaching, but it's about nourishing what's in a child. And we just have to let our kids know that who they are is valuable, who they are is unique, who they are is someone who has something to contribute to the world. And our role is to help them find that, unlock it, support them in it, and nurture them.
Beautiful.
And that if we do that, I think we'd be really way ahead of the game.
Indeed, indeed. This is something that we can't talk enough about. But before we've got to let you go, the book is entitled The Kindness Advantage: Cultivating Compassionate and Connected Children. Everyday ideas for raising kids who care. Amanda, tell people how they can connect with you and Dr. Atkins, and most importantly, how they can get the book.
Absolutely. So we have a website, www.thekindnessadvantagebook.com. And we are also on Facebook and Instagram as The Kindness Advantage. And people can order the book through our website or at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, IndieBound, or you can go into your local bookstore and ask them to order you a copy.
There you go. The book, once again, The Kindness Advantage. We want to thank you, Dr. Dale Atkins. You've seen her on the national news. You've seen her on the Today Show. And we also want to thank Amanda Salzhauer for writing such an important, impactful piece of work at this time in America's history. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Carla.
Thank you.
Hey, everybody, stay on point. We're back after this. Welcome back, everybody, to the OPT Network. This is my final point on point today. I want to thank our guest this morning for writing this book that I think is so timely, not just for families, but for our country. We are living now in a world where kindness has almost been brushed to the side. Compassion comes in short increments where you can see something happen, something horrible happen in your city, in your state, in the country, and you'll feel compassion for a minute, and then we'll move on. We see these mass shootings and we move on. And you might say, well, what should we do? Well, we know that life moves on and we have to move on, but we really have to instill a sense of compassion and kindness and love back into the culture. I believe that's why so many mass shootings are happening. That's why so much bullying is happening, because kindness is not being taught anymore. Sure, kindness is thank you, I'm sorry, excuse me, but it goes far beyond that. And what these two ladies have done is they have given us some good common sense ways to cultivate kindness. And so as I was reading the book, my family finds itself with two toddlers that we're raising that are now 3 and 4 years old. And it was such a poignant book for me to teach children that come from a hard place, like foster care, and coming out of their environment and coming into another environment, kindness. And so it resonated with me. And then as we started on the journey to teaching the babies that we have kindness, we started looking at each other And we started to say, are we being as kind to each other as a family as we could? And the answer was a resounding no, because we become so busy and so wrapped up in what we're doing and what we need, I, that sometimes we forget to be kind to others. And I think for every family, kindness is like love. It starts at home and it spreads abroad. If you can't be kind to the people that you're supposed to love the most, how on earth are you going to be kind to the world? And see, kindness is even bigger than that, because it's easy to be kind to people who are kind back to you. But it's not so easy to be kind to the clerk at the store who has a horrible attitude. It's clear that she doesn't want to be there. It's clear that she doesn't want to wait on you. It's clear that she's got too many people in the line because not enough people showed up at work, because not enough people were scheduled. So she's got a serious boot and she doesn't want to be kind. She's not kind. But guess what? Can we come out of ourselves and use the kindness advantage to extend kindness to that clerk who is really having a rough day? And one day I went into the store, and in kindness, I said to a pregnant lady that was standing in the line, I said, the line is really long, and my turn is not going to be much more than your turn, but I remember what it was like to be pregnant and to be tired and to want to get through the line. I said, so you can go in front of me. And she said, yeah, that would be great. And so the line starts moving and then it stops. And so I look over because there's a pregnant lady there and she's tired and she's aggravated. And so I say to the other lady, I say, listen, this is my sister and she's 9 months pregnant and she's tired and she has just one thing. Can she check out in front of you? And the lady looks at me and she says, no. She says, no, she can't. I don't have time for that. And I look at her and I say, thank you anyway. But you see my point? We get so self-involved that we forget just simply to be kind. Just that simple thing. When I tell you this lady had a buggy full of things, and this lady literally just had one item. But it's okay, because we have to extend kindness to this lady too, because we don't know what her issues were. We don't know why she was angry or why she didn't want to be kind. But if you just go out of your way to be kind with the people in your house, because sometimes it's hard to be kind to the people in your house. It's hard to be kind to your kids, especially when they're going through their teenage phases or whatever phases. Sometimes it's hard to be kind to your spouse when you just want to retort. See, what happens is when we feel attacked or we feel like we hadn't been treated right, then we want to retaliate, and not with kindness. And what this book does is it gives you just good common sense tips, and it tells us how kindness really helps to cultivate young people and people in the world that live better lives. And if we start with ourselves and we just focus on what we can do, then kindness, I believe, it will have an effect that will attract others, and it'll rebuff anger and harshness when you're just kind. You know, it's hard to be a heel to somebody that's being nice to you. And yes, it'll happen, but it'll happen less often. So today, just for today, I challenge myself, and maybe you'll want to challenge yourself, just to start with kindness in your house. And then when you master it in your house, it'll spread just like love, because love and kindness, I believe, go together almost like a hand and glove. And that, my friends, is my final point on point today.